Made by Beginners in Band. Oh, we could talk about this all day, couldn't we, Debbie?
Yes, we could, definitely we could. It's important not to learn bad habits because it's so much harder to unlearn wrong ways of doing it. It's easier to get it correct at the start, and it takes you on a lifetime adventure with music.
Did you make any mistakes? I did. I made so many mistakes.
Oh.
And it just slows you down, really. It just makes things hard.
And makes the conductor not so happy either.
Not us.
Not us.
We love the conductor.
Right.
It's really important that they actually choose the right instrument that suits them the best.
Yes. And I find that the instrument chooses the child. Sometimes we have preferences because we've had an influence in life. We just want to play that instrument. That instrument may not be suited to you for many varied reasons. You could be double jointed and it's hard for you to close the holes on a clarinet, or you may not be able to pitch notes, so brass instruments would be challenging. So it's very, very important that you get somebody that's knowledgeable, that can guide you in the right direction, and your initial disappointment will be so surpassed by the enjoyment that you'll get when the instrument chooses you.
Absolutely. And you know, some people think I'm too small to play that instrument that I really want to play. Do you think there's a little way around that sometimes? If you really are tiny, but you want to play the trombone, for example?
Oh, well, definitely. On trombones, you can get an extension handle.
That's
right. Or I once had a student, and all they wanted to do was the tuba. Now, the problem is the tuba was bigger than them. So there were options with that. They started with a baby baritone, then they went to a full baritone, to a euphonium, not a unicorn, and then they went on to the tuba, and all their dreams came true. So there is ways. Same with flutes. It's very important. Flutes can be quite a long instrument. You can get this wonderful thing called a curved head joint. And that's important for good technique, and you don't get any strain, and good embouchure setups. So there is ways and means sometimes around the physical challenges, but still get somebody that's qualified, experienced to help you choose the right instrument.
Absolutely. I love that advice. And of course, if you get the right instrument and you sit well with it, you won't have anything to undo later. You'll just be perfect. By the way, I've got a little girl in my band who's only small, and she's playing the tuba. Now, you might just think, how can she possibly blow enough air through that tuba to make it have any sound? But you know what? It's not done with the body so much. It's done with the
air.
With the air and the airflow and the embouchure. And we talk about that big word embouchure at Go Bravo Music, and it just means basically how you're blowing or through your mouth into that instrument. So make sure, as well as choosing the right instrument, that you get a teacher that you love,
yes,
that you understand, and that you can really work with, and you look forward to going to your lesson.
That's right. And, you know, as you grow and develop, you may want to progress to another teacher, so it's always an ongoing. Now, a teacher cannot be a magician. The teacher cannot practice for you. So you could have the best teacher in the world, but if you don't respect your teacher or listen to what your teacher says and do the practice each day, that won't help you. So it is a combination of things, like making a good cake. If you don't have any flour, the cake probably won't work. Just while we're at the instruments and the teacher, another thing is the instrument you get.
Oh, yes.
Be very, very wary about cheap instruments.
Oh, yes.
You quite often get what you pay for. Same with teachers.
Have you had students turn up in band and they've gone to a department store and said, I have bought this wonderful cheap instrument and that is terrific, but there are good and bad things about that.
Yes, unfortunately with cheap instruments is that their quality doesn't go into the valves or the mechanism. They tend to fall apart, or if the child is struggling with different aspects of just the valves not working, the child or the adult will become quite dispirited, disheartened, and then they give up. And look, if you pay the money for a good quality instrument or you hire one, it will take you on for a long time. They maintain your value. You can then on-sell them. So that you will recoup not all of the money, but you would pay that out in higher fees, or if you bought a cheap instrument, you would have bought many cheap instruments to a good instrument.
And not only that, you know, if you buy a very, very cheap instrument, the sound on that instrument might be woeful.
Yes.
And no matter how well you play that instrument, it might not quite sound the way you want to.
No.
So when you go to band and someone's got a really nice instrument sitting next to you, they sound great, and you play just as well, but you sound woeful. And it's not your fault.
And it's very frustrating.
So it can be really disheartening. So just check. And in fact, on Go Bravo Music, we've got a really good checklist, and we help you as much as we can to get those things right, so that things go really smoothly for you. So, what about bad posture and playing position, Debbie?
That's essential because for most of the band instruments, of course, air is what makes us work. So if our posture is not at an optimum, we cannot work efficiently, especially if you're small or a younger person, you need to use your lungs. So this is of prime importance, always good posture.
Notice how Debbie and I, we just sort of sit like this automatically.
Naturally.
Because we've been doing it for a long time. And you know what, we can play for a long time because we don't get tired so much. Of course we get tired, but we don't get so tired that we can't play anymore because our bodies are really working efficiently. We were talking about some of our pet hates with flute players playing like this on the back of a chair.
Resting on the back of the chair.
We talked about the head position.
Yes.
Needing to be well centred, so all the air column is nice and straight so the air can come out really easily.
And another thing with brass instruments, when we buzz, top lip vibrates, bottom lip goes out. Trumpeters who do not hold the trumpet up but rest it down are making their embouchure and their lips form the wrong way. I can see a person, not even hear them, and know from the look of them whether they're going to have any sort of range. And you can just tell straight away if they're not holding it up correctly, their face cannot work to the optimum. Now, it is heavy, it's an adult instrument, but if you work on that, you will go a long, long way. Clarinet's another one, is resting arms on thighs.
And trumpets.
And trumpets, that's
or
right.
one arm down.
Trombones, another thing. Trombone is a balance, it's weighted on the back so you can hold it up. It's made to be held up. If you do that, it's actually very uncomfortable and painful. Use the instruments, they're designed fabulous.
You can see that we are a bit passionate about this.
Highly passionate.
Because
it works for you.
It'll work.
Yes.
With that saxophonist, with that heavy sax and leaning to one side.
But saxophonists, I think it's really important, do not buy a neck strap. You can buy a shoulder harness, it goes across the back and the shoulders, it will get you good technique, it will also not give you any pain. There is not much price difference between them. Always go for a shoulder harness, so it goes both arms across the back, the instrument's hooked up here, you can play all day like that, whereas if it's on your neck, you'll be like this and terrible
Especially
posture.
when you start.
And these harnesses adjust so that the instrument can be as comfortable as possible. So you could play a tenor sax, even a baritone sax, if you've got the right harness.
Let's talk about how you blow the instrument, that word embouchure,
Embouchure.
which comes from the French word bouche. La bouche is the mouth.
Oh, really?
And embouchure means how you put the thing on your mouth.
Oh, right.
So that's what it means. It's a very fancy word.
Yes.
It's how we blow. And embouchure is all about how that mouthpiece sits on your mouth and how you blow it.
Or in your mouth, if it's a clarinet or saxophone, or with the flute, has its own particular embouchure. You actually don't blow into a flute, you blow across the head joint. That's where it's very, very important to have a good teacher that gets those things right. We do not see cheeks are never ever blown out. You may be able to quote examples of famous people who do it. They were quite a rarity and probably specialise in one particular style of music. It is not the way to go. Cheeks should never be blown out.
And we talked about watching yourself in the mirror if that happens to you.
Yes.
It's a really good way to keep check on yourself. And as Debbie said earlier, if you look at Go Bravo Music, how to buzz on a brass instrument, we talked about buzzing being a really good way to stop cheeks from puffing out and getting all the right muscles to get activated in your face so that everything works easily. And we want it to work easily so it's fun. Who wants to work hard to make good sound? I certainly don't. Especially when you might be playing quite a few hours a day.
Yes.
We want it to be easy so you can keep going and playing
And
lots
enjoy
of
it.
music.
Yes.
And have lots of fun. So, let's talk about good breath. Because without good breath, you don't make good sound.
You don't make any sound.
Well, yes. You look terrible. You can go red in the face. It's not a pretty sight. Especially from a conductor's point of view. You can always see who's breathing well because you can usually hear them best. And they're the ones who keep running around after band practice. They don't get tired out.
No, that's right.
So please, we've got a really good teaching on that at Go Bravo Music that you can link to, or just, we talk about getting the breath low. so that your bellows down this part of your body are working really efficiently and not huffing and puffing up into your chest, shoulders moving. Do you know how much energy that takes just to lift up and go down each time? So every time I take a breath, I'm doing all of that work rather than just keeping my posture up and learning to breathe very efficiently with my what they call diaphragmatic breathing. So we learn about that, and also just as you go further along with your breathing, to learn to take a very silent breath through a very open throat so we don't get a constricted throat that sounds like that. But that's a little bit more advanced. And when we start, we just really encourage you to breathe, take a good deep breath in so that airflow is going right through the instrument. So that's a bit of a work in progress, and we work on that at Go Bravo Music.
That's great. Now, the next thing, counting and timing. The dreaded counting. Now, in the band, we can sometimes feel we can get away with counting because we have a conductor out the front. That's counting. But that's not got to end there. And when you go home, you may use a metronome, which is a small device that will keep doing it. Learn to count straight away, always counting, because it helps everything come together. You actually become a way more efficient player because it's all about coordination, breathing, fingering, tonguing, and if you're keeping it in time, you will coordinate those things. Without counting, it's just a mess.
I've got players who can play perfect notes, and they can also just about play them in time. So they're counting in the right place. But suddenly in the band, when the conductor's out the front conducting, they're going a different speed to the conductor. And that's such a shame because they're perfect. But they're not perfect because they're not playing as the team plays. So there's a couple of skills in there, and that's why at Go Bravo Music we do what we call Go Bongo, where we do things like counting, sleep, 2, 3, 4, and walk, running, ding dongs, all sorts of ways, and we practice that counting every single week separately to when we play, because I get people who can count, they can't count and play notes at the same time. So it's really important that that counting becomes automatic, second nature. So we do lots of counting.
Yes, lots of counting.
And encouraging you to keep
count.
in time with the others in the band
All
and to
times.
watch the conductor. So we talk
Watch
about
the
that
conductor.
a lot.
That's right.
Oh, what about practice?
Well, the biggest mistake with practice is they don't practice.
Oh, that's number one.
Yes, number one
Problem.
is to get the instrument out of the case and practice. So I don't know, maybe you can work out somewhere at home that if it's possible for you to have the instrument out on a specifically made stand or on top of a piano or on top somewhere where it's easy for you to grab it, because it's interesting, once the instrument's out you're more tempted to pick it out than if you have to take it out and put it together. So that's the way. You really need to timetable in daily practice.
That would be amazing. Can you imagine how much you would learn and how fast you would go if you practiced every day?
Every day, that's right.
Do you know that's why we come to you online with Prac on Track at Go Bravo Music. So at a time, maybe halfway through the week, or when you've got time to slot it into your schedule, put it on and do Prac on Track. So you've got your band practice, maybe once or twice a week. You've got Prac on Track. You've got a lesson with us. You've got a lesson with your teacher. And then maybe you could do an extra little time just when you're going past your practice setup area, and we talk about how to set up your practice area as well at Go Bravo Music, just so that everything's there with a pencil, maybe with your music stand and maybe a little stand for your instrument, maybe with some water.
Yes.
All sorts of things. We want you to not be hungry when you come to practice. So all those sorts of things we talk about, but practicing and practicing well are really important, and it's really important that you actually don't practice the mistakes that you might be creeping in.
Yes.
So that's why we like to talk about things that to remind you at Prac on Track of the right way to play.
And then when you get something challenging in music, you may have to practice it, you may have to pull it apart in smaller sections, but your sense of accomplishment when you achieve it is just fantastic.
You know when I get a bar in music, like a little tiny bit that I can't play, I always practice that first,
Yes.
a few times. And then the rest of it, when it comes to play it inside the actual music, all of a sudden.
Because it's
I'm
really
good at
interesting,
that.
what you tend to do is practice what you're good at. So that gets better, but we don't practice what we're bad at. So it's a good idea what Cheryl says, practice the difficult bit first, and then as the reward, practice the good stuff later.
Excellent, I hope that helped.
Yes.
Let's talk about mispitching. Now, mispitching is where the note might be written as a certain note on the music, but some instruments are able to play this exact same fingering, but when you blow, a different note can come out. Oh, and that's very hard, especially on a brass instrument.
Yes. So that, to help those things, is to sing the note,
Yeah,
if you can get a note, to buzz the note, buzz it on your mouthpiece and lips, and then it's hearing your note in the line. When you're playing it at home by yourself, it's easier, but in the band it can be quite challenging. So it's a good idea, even if you have to put your hand up and ask the conductor, and you can sometimes latch on to maybe another section in the band is playing your note, and you can tune into that.
Yeah, it's much more difficult on brass instruments.
Yes.
And it's all about learning to hear those notes in your
It's very
head.
much using your brain ear, and you have to train that brain ear. It
We
doesn't
do
happen
a lot of
overnight.
that
Yeah, it doesn't
at
happen
Go Go
overnight.
Music.
Yes.
We do some. We're working on a lot of rhythms right now at the start, but later we start to talk about intervals and pitching those intervals.
Yes.
So we'll give you lots of help with that as we go along. So don't panic if you're playing the wrong pitch with the right fingers. It happens to all of us.
Yes.
Don't panic if you crack a note, because that happens to professionals all the time.
All the time. You enjoy that. Be proud of that.
Yeah, dare, risk making a mistake,
Exactly.
because otherwise the airflow gets caught,
And you can't play.
don't make any sound at all. Let's go on to number 8. And this, I find that sometimes people learn too fast and they can't keep up, and they feel all of a sudden like they're overwhelmed.
Yes.
Or they're terribly bored and they can play it all. Why can't everybody else play this and keep up with me?
Oh, but that boring word.
That boring word.
It doesn't actually exist in music. You can never be bored, because if you can play it, there's always something you could be working on. You could be working on your sound production, your breath control, your tuning and your intonation, your counting. So if you think that you know it all, think again. There is always something you can improve as a musician. You never have time to be bored. If you're bored, your brain's not engaged.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you know what? There's always something that you can be going on to think about as a solo piece, alongside of all the things you're doing in band. So just because the band might be going a certain speed, you can also go your own speed. Overblowing and the dreaded wah-wah. What does that mean?
Well, it's wonderful to use lots of air and play loud. There is a fine line between it being loud or forte in music and what we call blasting or overblowing. Now that's also a learned skill, and it's very much a taste. And you have to maybe learn to adjust your taste, because it's great to be the loudest, but when you're playing in a band, this is the team. It's the biggest team you will ever be playing in. So if you do not have the solo line or the most important line, it's probably not the proper moment for you to be blasting out your note. So this is all about musical intelligence, learning the balance between it. Enjoy your strength. I'm sure at some point the conductor will let you let rip, but still forte, not blastissimo.
Absolutely, and remember, there is no I in team. So,
very good. I love that. That's awesome. That's a good one. Thanks.
You know, I've got a spectacular trombone player who I absolutely love. He is fabulous. And it's sometimes solo for trombone and band. And the trombone part is maybe not the most interesting part to hear at that particular moment.
Yes, that's right.
So
it might be a flute solo, so we do not need an enormous trombone. The trombone may be playing, but at that point they have to balance.
They're very loud.
Or any loud. Saxophone is another one.
Yeah.
The saxophone, they need to tone it right down, because the flute can also be very loud, but it's a balance. It's always playing the balance. It's learning to be...
You might find that there's a clarinet solo that clarinet might have the tune, the important part that needs to float and sit on top of everybody else, what they're playing, to make a bit of a cushion for this solo. Except if you're playing, let's say you're playing the saxophone, and all you can hear are the saxophones, but you can't hear that clarinet solo, what does that tell you? Maybe I'm playing too loud.
Yes.
So just think about that as you go. We call it balance in band and in music. And the other thing that players often do is what I call the dreaded wah-wah, where notes bulge. So that means you don't have control of that sound as it comes out of your instrument's bell. We get a wah-wah sound. And sometimes I talk about feeling that the note goes through with the breath and just lifts off at the end of that sound. Da. So you taper it and lift it off gently so that you don't actually push air at the end of that note.
It's always an ongoing process. It never stops. That's the wonderful about music. You never get to the end and go, wow, I've got it all. There's always something you can improve on. It becomes a lifetime.
I would actually rather someone, though, play with the dreaded wah-wah for a while and get that sound going and get it out. So don't panic.
Yes, we all do it. I think everybody's going to do a wah-wah at
It
some
can be
stage.
ugly.
It's very ugly.
Yeah, we don't like ugly.
No.
Unless the music asks for, sometimes it asks for ugly.
That's right.
But sometimes it really doesn't ask for ugly at all. It asks for beautiful. So we want you to be able to play all those ways, not just with the dreaded negative thinking. Oh boy, I think it's really important to be around people that are inspirational like us. And others in your band. You know, I really, it's a pet hate of mine when children in a band look around and go, oh, that was awful to somebody else who's played. It's not very nice, is it? And we have a spirit where everyone encourages everyone else because everyone's learning together. You know, and it's really important that with our teacher, we have a teacher that encourages us to play.
That's right.
Mum and dads, really help your children. Don't go past the room and go, oh, that sounded awful.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a work in progress.
Yes. And it's the same thing in a band situation. Don't be caught up in what I call the sheep mentality because somebody says, this isn't fun or this is boring. Just go, well, step away from that. You have to be an individual. You have to play in a team, but you have to be very much an individual to be a musician. You will spend time practicing alone, and it needs a strength of character. You become out a very strong person if you can follow that line. Don't go with the group.
Don't go, bah, bah.
Yes, that's no fun
No
at
sheep.
all. No sheep.
Excellent. And finally, I love to play good music.
Yes.
It really is boring.
Yeah,
when you've
that's
got,
boring.
There is such a thing as boring music, and
Yes.
we really understand that. And especially when you start, maybe you can only play a few notes, so it's a bit more limited in what you can actually play. But that doesn't last long because you learn lots of new notes, and the more you can play, the more music you can actually play and sound better.
That's right. And you may find, just relating back to band, that if you're coping well with the band music, then get your teacher to supplement you with outside extra music, or put yourself in for an exam, extend yourself, challenge yourself. Esthethics are another great way. Put yourself up on a stage and play a solo. Take every opportunity to do solo performances and performances that will enhance your band playing.
And at Go Bravo Music, we do just that. We really encourage you to not just play in your own performance, but plan it and program it,
Yes.
then play in it, and you can even learn how to record it with Matt, who does recording room at Go Bravo Music, and he's quite funky with the hair, and he's an amazingly knowledgeable sound technician. And I know a lot of us know how to record our own music, but he really knows how to tweak it to make it sound great, so you can make your own CDs and do all that kind of thing as well. But performing even at home in front of mums and dads, at band, maybe you have a solo to play in your section. Some of you won't want to play solos. Some people really don't want to do that and they get very scared.
That's fine.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, because that suits certain people. In fact, I know people have been pushed to play too soon and they really get turned off playing. So it's just listening to what every person really wants to do. A lot of children love to get up on stage and play solos.
Yes.
Or if they don't want to play a solo, maybe they'll play in a quartet, that's 4 people, or a small group, or a duet, or a trio.
That's right, safety in numbers.
So I hope that's really helped. That's part of the 11 most common mistakes made in band by beginners. Thank you.
Great.
I'll let you.
Right, I'm out of here.
Yep, good girl.
Thank